Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet Malhotra. In what is being seen as the worst protest to rock the nation in over a decade, Turkey has erupted in widespread protests over the arrest of the mayor of Istanbul, Ekrem Imamoglu. Imamoglu, who was detained on the 19th of March and formally arrested 5 days later, was considered to be one of the strongest contenders to challenge Turkey's President Erdogan, who has retained power for over 2 decades now. The presidential candidate for the opposition's CHP party, Imamoglu's arrest is being seen as a politically motivated move in order to allow President Erdogan to continue dominating the politics of the Middle Eastern country. The CHP called the arrest a civilian coup and called for nationwide protests. The protests have now spread to over 55 districts, leading to violent clashes with the police in some areas. Over 1,100 protesters have been detained so far, with the administration also cracking down on the media, arresting at least 8 journalists and photojournalists. President Erdogan, who called the demonstrations evil, has accused the opposition of sparking unrest in order to disturb public peace, even as Erdogan and Imamoglu continue to remain defiant and has vowed to fight back. Meanwhile, the Turkey administration arrests of Erdogan and others over charges of corruption has led to concerns over the status of democracy in the country of Turkey and has sparked reactions from around the world. We'll talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the show is Sumit Peer, senior political commentator, Monica Verma, foreign affairs expert, also with us on the show. Ambassador Veena Sikri, former diplomat, joins us. Adit Kothari, foreign affairs expert, also here with us. Dr. Punsara Amar Singh, Middle Eastern expert, faculty of law, General Sir John Kotawala Defence University, is also joining us on the program. Sumit Peer, I'll begin with you. Well, Sumit, one thing is absolutely clear. We've had our own problems with Turkey, and fundamental to those problems was what Turkey is and what they want to be. They want to transform themselves into a theocracy, something that Iran also did, and look at their fate today. Erdogan also wants to become the leader, the de facto leader of the Islamic world, the OIC, which of course Saudi Arabia will never allow, and of course the rest of the Arabic countries will also not follow. Do you think that this unrest is a result of these policies which have continued under the leadership of Erdogan for the last few decades? And, if you have been the leader of a particular country for 2 decades, it's very, very clear and evident that in some way or the other, Sumit Peer, you have stifled the democratic process for the people to choose who their leader is.
Vinny, thank you very much for having your show. A beautiful question. Well, to begin with, there are 8 or 10 things which need to be put in perspective for the people to get a good glimpse of who Tayyip Erdogan is. Tayyip Erdogan is an Islamist. He's a jihadi. He believes himself to be the Khalifa, and he believes that he can restore the old Turkmen empire back, and he will be the de facto Khalifa of the Islamic world. He supports all kinds and types of terror in the world. His son Bilal Erdogan and himself have been critical about India of various things, including Kashmir, and he has shown all the soft corner for the people, for the separatists of Kashmir. Very recently, he was in Pakistan. He went for Pakistan for Champions Trophy, and the Prime Minister of Bihari Pakistan and the President of Bihari Pakistan both went to airport to pick up this leader. Because he promised Pakistan Earth, sun, and the moon. Yeah, and I'll tell you where does Turkey stand now. Vineet, if you look at Turkey today, the GDP is growing at less than 3%, which you will say still is good. 3% is not too bad, but look at some other parameters. Inflation in Turkey has touched 46%. It was 42% around 10 days back, and Erdogan saying, I have controlled the inflation. 46% is good. Interest rate in Turkey is around 47%. It increased 6 points after this fiasco came in. Right? So 46% inflation, 47% interest rate. Erdogan is doing fantastically well. His economy is highly indebted. He has reasonably okay foreign exchange reserves, which he claims to have. And now, why did this fiasco happen, and what is the logic behind it? Look, it all started around 1.5 to 2 months back, when Jolani, the ISIS terrorist, became the head of the Syrian government. One of the first foreign leaders to visit him was the Ukrainian foreign minister. After that, there's a gentleman called Fidan Hakan. Fidan Hakan is the external affairs minister of Turkey. He went and met Jolani. After that, Even Tayyip Erdogan met Giuliani, and it was decided, it is believed that because of their support only, he came into power, and they decided that in Kurdistan, where America has 2,000 Marines and where all the oil of Syria is, that Giuliani and his ex-ISIS factions will control Kurdistan because that's where the oil is. Erdogan doesn't have a good equation with Kurds, they keep on killing and fighting each other. And all the jails wherein the Kurds are holding the most deadly ISIS terrorists will be taken over by Giuliani. That is one ISIS terrorist taking over the jails of other ISIS terrorists, and Turkey will make sure it happened. That day I had predicted on TV and some social media channels I said, look, this is the end of Erdogan because he is directly stepping into foot in the area of United States and their interests, and is trying of risking their stakes in the Middle East. So it's a matter of time. Erdogan will get a taste of his medicine. Now look at the sequence of events. This Imamoglu, I might not be able to pronounce his name very right. He is the mayor of Turkey. Then he became the most prominent leader. There was a exit poll done. The Jabki election is supposed to happen in 2028. In that exit poll, it was told he will defeat Erdogan lock, stock and barrel. Then when they tried to arrest him, first 300 people got arrested, then 1143. Out of 81 districts of Turkey, 55 are already infested with terrorists and people uprising. Not only that, yesterday all the Turkish opposition got together and named Imamoglu as the de facto presidential candidate. Now, when Erdogan crosses roads with Donald Trump, tries to harm American interests, and needless to say, he in a very coveted message warned America that your bases in Turkey cannot be guaranteed. The safety of your bases in Turkey cannot be guaranteed. After that, it was a moment of truth to come through. It was some point of time the things will come through. But this man has destroyed Turkey. The Turkey of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk and Turkey of Erdogan are miles apart. There is no similarity. He propagated Islam. He destroyed the other minorities. He even changed the biggest Christian cathedral into the Blue Mosque. So there's a lot of history of this man, and he's with all the terrorists of the world.
Okay, all right, ma'am. All right, you absolutely have great points over there. As a secretary, do you think that the problems in Turkey can be attributed to the decisions as well as the disposition of one man, and that is the president of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan?
Well, I think he's been there for more than 20 years. And I think certainly his impact and his influence on Turkey in these last 20 years has been enormous. Just the very simple fact that in 2003, when he first came to power, he was prime minister. But then in 2016, there was a military coup in Turkey. And after that, in 2017, there was a kind of a referendum, and what is called an executive presidency came into being. So he is the all-powerful leader of Turkey. He does not brook any resistance from anybody, not from any parliamentarians and so on. And he has been imposing his will, and he's been working a lot with the very conservative religious fundamentalist groups of Turkey. So what is described for him as authoritarian populism, which is, this is the kind of populism which an authoritarian person exercises, but this becomes rapidly and increasingly unpopular as the days go on, and that is what we have seen. There were elections 2 years ago in 2023, and there was a candidate from the opposition Republican People's Party, and of course Erdogan was able to defeat him. But subsequently there have been elections in the local and provincial levels in Turkey, across Turkey, and in 81 of these provincial elections across the country, I think the Republican People's Party has got 11 more seats than the AK, Justice and Development Party of Erdogan. So now it is very clear that even in the popular mind, the Republican Party is ahead, and Ekrem Imamoglu, the mayor of Istanbul, who is now in jail, he is exceedingly popular, and he is now known as the candidate of the Republican People's Party for the next presidential elections. So obviously this only means two things. First of all, that Imamoglu's popularity is very much on display, and it is very clear that he is very popular, and this increases the anger of Erdogan, and he is of course more and more oppressive and more, arresting more and more people, that is likely to reduce his popularity even further. As Sumit P rightly said, he has lost a lot of popularity already, more so because of the state of the economy, which is in a very bad shape, and the people are really suffering. And Erdogan thinks that because of the religious factor, they will not complain, but it is very clear that people are now remembering the good old Kemal Atatürkists, the Kemalists as they call them. The Kemalists, the people who believed in Mustafa Kemal Atatürk's philosophy, they were described as Erdogan as being elitist and not knowing the interests of the people and so on. But now we see gradually that it is these centrists, they are the ones who are becoming more and more popular. So, and I think, of course, Erdogan's relationship with USA will create more problems. We also know that Erdogan, and his coming into NATO, so on. All these problems, and EU and NATO, all these issues of Erdogan's, Turkey's assimilation in the power structures. Whether it is, either to join the European Union or what the role should be for him in NATO, all these things are very, very political and sensitive. And now with Trump there, I think this will create even more problems. I think it is very worrying about the kind of relationship Turkey is trying to develop with the Islamists in Syria. And that's certainly a great matter of worry for us. I think that if there is going to be, this is going to be very difficult. And I think we saw that last month, when Erdogan was in Pakistan in February on a visit, he did again refer to Kashmir and talked about his support for the people of Kashmir and so on. Although in last year, when he went to the UNGA, he did not refer to Kashmir, and there was speculation in India that, is he turning the page and so on,
right,
and becoming
right.
Yeah. But it didn't happen, and we obviously see that he has this great relationship with Turkey. So Turkey, Pakistan and Malaysia, they tried to develop a special power structure even within the OIC. That has not succeeded very well, but Pakistan certainly counts a lot on its relationship with Turkey. But I think that this development of Ekrem Imamoglu becoming so popular is going to be very difficult for Erdogan to resist. But if he's using his suppressive tactics, then one doesn't know what kind of revolution or resistance there will arise in Turkey.
All right, fair enough. Let us also get Adit into this conversation. Adit, do you think that Middle East already in crisis, the region could afford another upheaval in a country like Turkey?
So the upheaval in itself is questionable. See, because in 2013, the Gezi Park, revolution that took place in Turkey, which is far more stronger than what we see over the last 6 days. But yet, Erdogan was able to engineer some sort of control. Yes, his popularity may have diminished, but we know him as a micromanager. We know him as somebody who enforces a lot of strength on the population and enforces his will on the population, and that is what it's basically come down to. The 1,000 arrests that have been made also. Turkey has this very sophisticated face mapping, face recognition software within the law enforcement agencies, and that was basically exercised largely to gather across all of these people and arrest them. So the key factors, in my opinion, that we need to watch out for, I think, how much more of a scalability of these protests eventually happens. We've also got to bear in mind that Eid is around the corner. That could diffuse the actual protest in itself, because people want to go back to family celebrations. Would probably want to spend time with families. So if there is a sustained growth in the scale of the protest, that might yes. Diminish Erdogan's long-term standing. But if not, if the scale of the protest in itself is diffused and diminished, that could see Erdogan gaining some sort of popularity, or sorry, not popularity, but some sort of control. He may be able to assert in a short-term level. But also, what we've got to see is the economic aspect of things, as Sumit also pointed out, and Madam Sikri also pointed out. The economic fallout on the people, the kind of inflation that we see, how much of a brunt that does the ground level people actually feel, and as a consequence come out on the street, will also be something that could actually decide the future of Erdogan. But most importantly for me, it's the international sort of response to this, where EU has been very, very soft so far. They haven't spoken about any sort of sanctions on Erdogan. US hasn't even said anything about it. So unless and until there are large-scale implications which sort of have a ripple effect on the lives of the people, I don't see much changing in the ground from a long-term perspective. Vineet.
All right, Monica, your assessment of what's going on in Turkey, and there is obviously this American angle here. There is the angle of NATO as well. America does not want to support NATO. Turkey is a member of this alliance as well. What kind of a geopolitical implications are there for Turkey if this internal disturbance does not cool down?
I see it, a long cycle finally coming to an end, because when it all started out with Erdogan's term in power, he showed very promising signs. The economy was, right. It came back on track. The people were very happy, and he also ruled with a certain sort of leniency. And suddenly, his rule in power started getting threatened from various quarters, and that is when the authoritarian streak in him started coming out. And these protests, as far as I followed it, this week's protests, I think are one of the most serious and one of the most major challenges to his power. And I think unlike the earlier protests where there was no big figure around whom people could basically rally around, or people could support as a challenger, as actually a very strong alternative to Erdogan's rule and power, I don't think there was anyone like that. But what has happened is that something something that was only between two leaders has now expanded. It has now become a huge rallying cause for people at large, and it's not only remained about Erdogan's arrest of Imamoglu, but it is also about him getting people out on the streets, and all these grievances, all these grudges that people started having with Erdogan are finally coming to fore. So I think it is a long cycle, and the failed experiment, we all can see it, how he planned to make Turkey into another, avatar of this Ottoman Empire. But that didn't really happen. So the whole Islamization of Turkey that we've witnessed all these years, and the way the economy has come down, all the panelists before me have already spoken about how the economy has come down. So I don't want to get into the details of it, but certainly there is a lot of economic tension, lot of economic anxiety, which is now brewing into trouble for Erdogan. And obviously, in the next few days, we will see him clamping down on this, coming down too hard on this. He's never been someone who's encouraged civil society freedom. He's never been someone who's encouraged even the media to speak freely. So obviously there's going to be a huge, round between the protesters and Erdogan, as so far as I see it. And let's just see how it pans out. So I'll rest my comment to this.
All right. Fair enough. Valid points there. Let's also get Dr. Punsara into this conversation. Dr. Punsara, Turkey, of course, treading on thin ice at this point in time. Will Erdogan lose his seat, or do you think that he's going to crack the whip like he has also done many a times in the past?
Correct. I think it's quite a pertinent question that I don't think so that we should stumble into a quick assessment that Erdogan and his power will be completely diminished as a result of these protest movements happening across Turkey. I don't think so that we can create a picture, something similar to what we witnessed 15 years ago from the Arab Spring, how it started in Tunisia and Libya, because the Turkish situation seems to be quite a contrast to the Arab Spring, because whatever said and done, the Erdogan has secured nearly 52% from the last election, and at the same time, regardless of the opposition stemming from the big major cities around Turkey, he has got his supporters, right? So if you look at the arrested mayor, who happens to be the mayor of Istanbul, is quite popular in Istanbul. But when you go beyond Istanbul, when you go to the rural Turkey, still Erdogan has established a powerful vote bank, the vote base. It's located somewhere deep beneath the Turkish suburb, Turkish urban areas, because that is mainly attributed to how he propagated his Islamic ideology, the quite authoritative populism, as a watchword, as a slogan throughout his political campaign. So, in my personal assessment, we can't assume that this protest movement will lead to a huge power shift, or rather an upheaval in the Turkish system. And also, we can't forget the fact that he himself has forged the relationship with Russia, because Turkey openly made a statement when the Russian invasion began almost 3 years ago that Turkey would not join imposing sanction on Russia, just as how the EU and the other Western countries did. So there is a kind of, the unholy alliance between the Moscow and Ankara. And also, having said that, we should not forget that all these the Islamic ideology, the pro-populist ideology established by Erdogan, to a certain extent stands in favor of him in the long run. So if you look at the Turkish legal system, even the Article 301 of the Turkish Penal Code clearly imposes sanctions, imposes penalties on any Turkish citizen who criticizes Turkey, who criticizes the government of Turkey, right? The famous author who wrote the My Name is Red, right? He was arrested under this particular section of Section 301. And also, right, if you look at the main subsections, the main issues regarding the episode which is going on in the Turkish political system in Turkey, and he, even though he may appear to be a dictator, he may appear to be an autocrat for the Western world.
Right.
Let
me also bring in Sumit once again into this conversation. Sumit, let us also not forget that there is this huge angle that you and I have discussed in the past as well, of Turkey supporting a lot of causes, and perhaps a lot of adverse causes that perhaps the Americans, or even India for that matter, does not agree with, and that is their tacit support to a number of terror organizations.
Really, that goes without us saying. Turkey doesn't miss an opportunity to support any to all terrorist organizations. To look, they have all the sympathies for Kashmiri terrorists. They have all the sympathies for all the kinds and type of Islamic terror anywhere in the world. They have never condemned a Hamas, Houthis, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad. They have never condemned the beheading of Christians in a Nigerian church. He never utters a word about anything. Even the kidnappings which were done by Boko Haram, Khalifa did not even utter a word. He was silent. He was deaf and dumb. And his son, Bilal Erdogan, has been part and parcel of fermenting trouble in the past when we had Delhi riots and all. His hands and legs were seen everywhere. And let me tell you a couple of things. Look, Vineet, the things are very different. If you look at this so-called mayor of Turkey, even Erdogan started his career before he rose to prominence. He was the mayor of Turkey only. So mayor of Turkey is not a chota position. It's where people usually rise to the top. It's like the chief minister of Delhi becoming the prime minister. Though even you can be the chief minister of Gujarat becoming the prime minister. There's no rule like that. So that is the point number one. Point number two, look, he has directly challenged American interests in Middle East. Right? If you go and challenge Trump, it's not Biden, it's not Sleepy Joe on the chair. You challenge Biden, you challenge Trump, he will hit you back. Look, Houthis challenged Trump. And Biden did not get an alliance of 20 people together. Chalo aake bombari karte. He is sending US DOD and they are doing the needful. He did not even talk to UK, he did not talk to France, he didn't talk to Germany, he didn't even talk to Jordan. He didn't even talk to UAE. He went and did what he had to do. And Houthis are literally chickening out. Who is giving weapons to Houthis? Your friendly neighborhood, Erdogan. Who is arming, who is trying to help Iran with his drones and all? It is again Erdogan. Who is trying to help this Hezbollah and Hamas? Again, he was involved everywhere. Then he went ahead and threatened directly America with the security of their bases. There are 7 instances in the last 6 months where American bases were threatened in the Middle East, and people have reached up to their doorstep. So if you go and threaten Trump, if you go and threaten, the Americans under Trump, the response is going to be different. CIA under Biden is a different animal. CIA under Trump is an altogether different animal. The point which I was not trying to avoid, but let me talk to you directly. What do you think this Imam, or the, what is his name, Imamoglu, whatever the name is, I can't get a Turkish name right. Did he rise to prominence without like that? Is there not a CIA hand behind it? Is there not a people who are helping him? And as far as the Russia goes, there's a deal between Trump and Putin. tell me one instance where Russia has even uttered a word about American actions in the Middle East after Trump has come in. They have not uttered a word. There's a deal, we'll help you in Ukraine, you keep out of the Middle East. That is what the deal is between Americans and the Russians. So Russia is not going to come in. And with this all nefarious activities, with all the terrorists of the world and all these Islamist organizations of the world, including Muslim Brotherhood, I think with Trump on the other side of the divide, he has trying to bite what more than he can chew. And he is not a friend of India. And when he had a disaster, we had sent the second biggest relief team there. After that, he came and again started talking Kashmir. He went to Pakistan, he again started talking Kashmir. And don't forget, Israelis sent the biggest ever rescue team to his country. We have all the sympathy and empathy for the people of Turkey, but not for this man. And I now want to bring up one more interesting aspect. There are some prominent Bollywood stars who were meeting his wife. What was the discussion between those stars and his wife? Why were they meeting his wife? What was so common? What were taking about? The people who are talking anti-India, or talking about dividing India, why do these so-called Bollywood stars, their wives, ex-wives or girlfriends, have anyway lost the count, go and meet such nefarious characters? Would they come and answer what was the meeting about? What did they discuss? These are some of the aspects we need, which we have to know. And I believe if CIA wants, if Trump wants, because his proximity with Iran is the biggest stumbling block, if he doesn't control that, I think this time around, the coup or whatever the resentment against him will support, and it will not be organic, sir. It will not be a people's movement. There will be forces and people behind it which will make it go the way they want, unless and until he really changes his tracks and forgets all his ambitions of being the Khalifa of the Ottoman Empire, which he won't. Let's see. Because if he does that, his brand of politics is over. Erdogan as a politician is over, and his hold to power is over. That is the reality of Turkey. He has destroyed a beautiful country like Turkey. He has destroyed the futures of people of territory. That is what the Khalifa is about. He uses Islam to be in the power. He sells this Islam ka churan to everybody so that he is by de facto the power of the Middle East. But look at his economic power. Will MBS let him rule Middle East? That day is never going to come. MBS will never ever let him loot the Middle East. Look, even the change of power we need. Earlier, the things used to happen in Qatar, everything has moved to Riyadh now. Look at the changing trends.
Absolutely, absolutely right. All right, well, we've run out of time. Appreciate everybody who joined us and filled in with their perspective on this very sensitive issue, which is, of course, worrying to a large degree and taking place in Turkey. We'll dip into a short break. On that note, we'll be right back.